All right, so for those who aren't fans of mine, I love a cruise holiday, and I talk about them a lot. So, for example, I accidentally ended up on an Elvis Presley themed cruise once, which is a whole story. But cruise update. So, a month or so ago, the whole family, we go up to Queensland. And so this boat we're on, it's got water slides, right? They're my favourite ones. It's got the normal water slide, just side to side, whatever. And it's got this one called Green Lightning. And Green Lightning is where it's like a tube at the top, and it's got a platform. So you step in, and then it closes. So you're completely enclosed, and then randomly within the next 5 seconds, the floor just drops, right? And away you go, right? So I've been on Green Lightning before, but it was very cold in Sydney, so I was waiting for us to get up a bit higher. So it was warm because it's super cold, like way up the top, waiting for the slide. Right, terrible news, tragedy. The water slides are broken. They break. I couldn't believe it. All right. Great news though, redemption. Well, I get back to the room that afternoon, and the cruise has said, sorry guys, sorry about the water slides, we're giving every room $50 credit, right? But guess what? There's 6 of us in the family, we're in 2 rooms, that's $100, $100. So they turn Green Lightning on again a couple of days later. I happen to be up there. It makes this horrible grinding sound, like this really loud grinding sound. Never got it going again. So, life's full of swings and roundabouts, isn't it? $100 up, but no Green Lightning for this guy. All right, so none of that's anything to do with what we're talking about today, except that I did kind of write all these ideas, sitting in a giant pod lounge, staring at the Pacific Ocean, with Green Lightning right behind me, taunting me. So what could have been? All right, so today, Jesus talked a tremendous amount about money, right? If we in churches talked as much as he did, they'd be like, oh, is that all they ever talk about, right? And here in particular, we don't like to bang on about it too much. We tell you the ways of giving. Sometimes we'll do a couple of minutes. But every now and then, it's nice to have a bit of a go-over of it, right? So we'll be doing that today, every 6 months, every year or something like that. So I'll have a go at it. Okay. So, however, it's not about money. We're not talking about money, we're not talking about finances, because I think the idea is about being generous or being a generous person, and then everything else just kind of flows out of that. All right, so it's an enormous topic, obviously. We can't cover it all, so we'll go over a few things, maybe take away a few little nuggets, all right? Okay. All right, so... yes, and now, so what we're going to talk about is it's coming out of generosity, and our theme today is going to be that, so our theme is not tithing, but purposeful generosity. So we're going to have a look at tithing, as in is that for us, how does that work these days? And the goal is going to be to come to the conclusion that it is planned, intentional, and purposed generosity that we're after, being a generous person rather than out of obligation. All right, not obligation, not paying our dues, all right, so I'm going to try and make that case, because that gives us a lot of freedom, right? We're not under some restriction or some, tax or fee we've got to pay. We just give because we love it, right? Freely you have received, freely give, all right? No, not guilt, not arm twisting, but because we're part of something that we believe in and we benefit from it and we love everyone around us, so we want to be part of it and we want to contribute. All right. So, that have not motivated me to talk about this today, all right? That have not motivated me. Slide 1, please. All right, first of all, there's no pressure here. There's no pressure, there's no guilt trips, all right? If you walk away today and say, oh, I guess I'll cough up some dough, every now and then to church or something, fail. That's it. No, we're not going for that. No pressure, no guilt trips, all right? And pressure and manipulation, it can take many different forms, right? It can be kind of like making bold promises. It can be, if you give God $1,000, He'll give you 100,000. Right? I've literally heard that said on televangelists and so on, and they'll literally say God will give you 100-fold. Right? You give him $1, what do you know? You'll get back 100. Obviously, it doesn't work like that, but it's very tempting. It's very tempting when you hear it, right? Or guilt. If you're not paying up, if you're not contributing, you're robbing God. Right? More on that later from Malachi 3:10. Right? But the funny thing about these manipulation and guilt tactics is they work. They work. These televangelists, they do pretty well, right? And churches that put a lot of pressure on you or hammer you to tithe, it kind of works, right? Because anything that plays on our emotions or fears is going to have some effect. But what a terrible medium to long-term strategy, right? We're just going to burn people out. It's completely out of balance. We don't want to give because we're scared or because we think we're going to get cursed or because we have to or because we have our arm twisted. God loves a cheerful giver. He loves a cheerful giver. All right, so anything you're kind of forced or cajoled into giving, don't bother. Don't bother. Like, not at the supermarket or whatever, right? Like, I don't mean that. I don't mean like petrol or stuff. Like, gosh, petrol annoys me, right? $120. $120 for a tank. But don't do a runner, okay, because you don't want to pay for it. Okay? All right. So a few years ago, about 5 years ago, I hadn't been at this church for very long, and after the service, there was a special members meeting, and it turned out at that point that the church bank account was quite low, right? It was quite critically low, and my friend Darren, right, who very rarely gets on the stage and is very reluctant to do these sort of things, he got up and he presented, he had the job of laying out the situation and to ask us all, without any guilt or pressure, to just have a think about how he could help, right? So I watched him up there struggling to straddle the line between saying, hey, we really need everyone to do their part, but no pressure, right? And I kind of caught the heart of what we're about here, right? It's that tension between the two, right? So, as we'll see later, we should be making a contribution, but we don't want to, I don't want anyone to ever feel obligated or like we're forcing anything. All right? So, I'm trying to capture that same balance today. It's very fine balance. Okay. So, the second reason I'm not talking about this is because I don't have a conflict of interest, right? So, I don't get paid. I don't get a cent. I don't get a cent from this church, right? Although, to be fair, my children do clean the church sometimes, and they get paid, right? But me personally, I don't really have a horse in the race. I am quite emotionally invested. I love it. I love it here, and I'd be very sad, if things didn't go well. But I've got no financial stake, so I don't. So in a completely neutral sense, I don't care less, right? But in an emotional sense, I do care. Okay, all right. And the third thing is, I'm not talking about this today because we're desperate, right? Things aren't like they were 5 years ago. We did come through that period. You can get a financial position summary of the church. We give it out. We literally give it out every year at the AGM, and so things aren't wonderful. We run pretty close. We're right on above or below break even every month, but things aren't super desperate. So I'm not here begging, saying please, 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 right? So so things aren't too bad. They're okay. So in the financial report, it breaks it down, and the elders get it every month, and it's got all the numbers. It's got salaries, utilities, what we get for hall hire, etc., etc. Norman, the treasurer, does it every month, and luckily, it's a big spreadsheet, and luckily he does these as bullet points. He does these bullet points to just give us a bit of a summary, and I only read the bullet points, right? So, but there's one number that I look at a bit closer, And that number is offerings. Offerings. So offerings is obviously, you and I, and what we are just freely contributing, right? So there's things on there like hall hire, and hall hire that's just good business. We've got a facility here, we might as well generate as much dollars out of it as we can, so that's great. But the offering number, a component of that goes to the spiritual health. Right? It's not everything. It's not the whole lot, but a component of that goes to the spiritual health. Because if we're all feeling connected and we're belonging and we're in partnership and we're feeling ownership of our community here, then that's going to be reflected in that we want to contribute to it. Right? So that number interests me a bit. All right. Okay. So now, let's talk about, I'm going to give 3, I've been around churches forever. I've seen it all. Well, I haven't seen it all, but I've seen it most, right? So I'm going to give it 3 models or methods or frameworks that churches and individuals roughly fit into with their giving. And not just giving to church, right? As we'll see later, it's not just, giving to the offering. It's generosity altogether. All right. So the 3 are there's tithing. We're gonna have a look at tithing, then purpose generosity, and then we're gonna have a look at like doing nothing. If you're doing nothing, all right. And at that point, look out, might drop some truth bombs on you. Okay. All right. So it might get a bit real. All right. So yes, remembering it's all about being generous people. All right. So let's have a look at tithing. Can I have my tithing verse up there, right? Okay, this word is everywhere. It's everywhere in churches. And most churches have it in their giving model in some form or another. Right? We use it here. We use it here as well, right? So what is it? It's tenthing. It's a tenth of your income, right? Or actually, it's not income. The Bible word is increase. Increase. So whatever that means, right? That could mean anything. But the Bible word is increase. All right. So where's this idea? Where's it come from? It comes from the Old Testament, obviously, right? It's there all through it. All right. So it starts. The idea it comes out of an eternal principle, which is first fruits. So it's setting aside a portion of your increase, or the first portion, for God. All right? So this goes way back, way back. Okay, so here's what happens. All right? The nation of Israel arises. Okay, it's a theocracy. It has a government where the church or the priests are the government, right? So God gives them loads and loads of rules, and the rules all have different reasons for existing. Some of them are eternal principles or ongoing principles, like don't murder people, and some of them are just for where they are, and some of them are like adaptations of the eternal principles. So for first fruits, for example, like God said, okay, let's do tithing, right? So they're a theocracy, so they've got to pay 10% to, it's like a tax. They're paying it effectively to their government, right? So, are we in the nation of Israel? No, we're not. Are we in a theocracy? No, we're not. All right? So, I used to go to this church. I went to this church for 20 years, and every single service, every single one, there would be a talk for about 3 to 5 minutes about giving. So, 20 years, probably about 1,000 services, I reckon. So I have heard a lot about giving, and I reckon probably at least a quarter of the giving talks use this verse. It's actually 2 verses from Malachi 3:10. Now, that's a minimum of 250 times that they've used this verse. You would think they would run out of angles to come at it from, but you'd be surprised, right? I heard it talked about what the tithe is, what the storehouse is, what the food is, test me, the floodgates of heaven. Not enough room to get every single angle taken. Like even the word bring the whole tithe. Over time, people would just, it was just the easiest one to go to. So a lot of people would just go to it, and then they just hit on one word or one idea from it. So I've heard it from every angle. All right, but here's the thing. I would always think, you know what, I'm not really sure this directly applies to me. And this is actually not too complicated. Malachi. Where in the Bible is Malachi? All right? You hit the gap between the Old and New Testament. It's just to the left. It's just to the left. It's in the Old Testament, right? It's in the Old Testament. This is under the law. It's under a blessing and cursing system. There are laws, and God says, do things my way, and I will secure that things will work out for you. Don't, and I will also secure that things will not go well for you. All right? So that's the rule they were living under. So when it talks about a storehouse here, that's literally a store. They're literally storing food. Right? It's not a metaphor. We use it as a metaphor, but they're literally storing food or grain or whatever. The windows of heaven, right? I would often hear used as a metaphor for, God blessing your business or your salary or whatever. Like they're literally talking about the wind. Like it is a metaphor for weather. It's like rain and stuff. So this is to the Israelites. It's, do we eat or do we starve to death? Right? And God is in control of that. And if we meet certain conditions, God will look after us. Right? Now, is that for us anymore? Kind of not really. Right? So is that for today? Not really, right? Because it's in the Old Testament. But wait. Matthew 23:23, right, says, this is the other one I'd hear. It says this. It says, woe to you, this is Jesus talking. He says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe, but the only mention of tithe in the New Testament, you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. So I would hear, see, Jesus says about tithing that you ought to do it. These you ought to have done. But again, same thing. Who's he talking to? Who's he talking to? He's not talking to us. He's not talking to New Testament Christians. He's not talking to the future church. He's talking to the scribes and the Pharisees who are under this law. And by the way, the paying their tithes here is not even the point. The point is that they are doing these little things for show, but behind the scenes, they're terrible people, right? And also, they're the main antagonists of Jesus, and they have the least credibility. They have the least credibility to be getting stuck into him. So that's the point there. It's not, tithing, everyone ought to do it. They're forever and ever and ever. Right? So, okay, the principle's there for sure. Like first, like putting aside part of your increase for God for sure. But is tithing directly? Are we under the obligation to do it like they were? I don't think so. All right, not a hard obligation. Why do churches push it though? Why do we talk about it? I'll tell you why. Because it's easy. It's kind of practical and achievable, and it's easy maths. It's easy maths, isn't it? If we were telling you 7.75%, right, you'd struggle. You have to get a calculator. 10% easy, right? And by the way, it is, as we'll see soon, it is a good starting point. Right? I'd be starting there when I'm thinking about my giving. If it's good enough for Israel for thousands of years, we should have a look at it. All right, so we're not under that obligation. Right? So isn't that great news? We're free. Yay, we get to keep all our cash for ourselves. Hooray. Hooray. No. All right. So the second thing, here is the model that I think applies to us as New Testament Christians. Okay? All right. Now, as is typical of the Bible, it doesn't spell it out all in one hit. That would be lovely if it did. It's sprinkled in bits and pieces. So let's have a look at the couple of bits and pieces. Give us the first one. Now there's one that was too long. It's 1 Corinthians 9. All right. It's very long, but don't worry. I read it, and you can trust me. All right. So, and the point of it is, it straight up says that people who dedicate their lives as ministers, right? It said the phrase is that sow spiritual seed. That they are, because people were saying, oh, Paul, you shouldn't be getting paid, right? And he said, yes, I should. People who sow spiritual seed are quite entitled to have their material needs met by those benefiting, right? The idea being, if we're getting benefit from somebody ministering the gospel to us and it's taking them all week, we should compensate them for that. We should at least meet their living expenses, okay? All right, now we've got, I guess the next one, I think it's 2 Corinthians. Is the thing working? Oh, yep, there we go, okay. All right, so here is our model. Not tithing, but remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Whoever sows generously will also reap generously. All right, here we go. Each of you should give what you have decided or purposed in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver, and God's able to bless you abundantly, so at all things at all times, having all you need, you will abound in every good work. So, what are we doing here, right? We are purposing in our heart what we're going to give. We're going to look at our circumstances and go, what part can I play, right? And do it cheerfully. We've got to do it cheerfully. We've got to be like, yes, I'm happy to do this. I'm happy to contribute. And then God's able to bless you abundantly. But for what? For what? So you will abound in every good work. So it's kind of like a cycle, you know, like you contribute. God will, if God gives back, then you're like, great, right? Okay. See, okay, and give us the next one. All right. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Share with the Lord's people in need. So there's 2 parts to this. Part 1 is sowing in where we're fed, right? People who, the infrastructure and the people in the church, we should fund that if you're being ministered to. Second one, meet needs. Meet needs, okay? Particularly note with the Lord, share with the Lord's people who are in need. And give us the next one. All right, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we'll reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people. Who in particular? Especially to those who belong to the family of believers, all right? So, I think it goes, so contribute where you're being fed, meet needs, particularly in your community or where you've got links to things to do with church life or whatever, or people who in church you know. Next, everything else, whatever you're into, right? That's how I think it should go. So, God's got this super system, right? You join a church, and the church provides things for you. It provides things like community and friends and teaching and gathering, and your kids go to this and that, and you can get pastoral help and whatever. We do a million things, right? And together you combine your efforts, and together we can achieve more than we ever could alone. How you can get prayed for, whatever. It sounds wonderful, all right? So last term, I'm in one of the pop-up groups. You know the pop-up groups last term? 10 weeks, 10 chapters in this book. And it was so great. It was a wonderful group, and we were all quite raw and honest at times. And you know what? Every week I would drive away, right, and I would think, man, what a great bunch of people I get to hang out with here. Like that was really great. And but how would this come together? How would I be talking with this group of people and having this good a time, right? Without the church existing. But here's the thing: the infrastructure that allows those sort of things to happen, it all costs money. It all costs money. We just all turn up every week, but every light costs money, right? The air conditioning costs money. This microphone, these cost heaps, don't they? Right? Tom worries about these because they cost a lot, right? yeah, they cost heaps. Right, but here's God's wonderful system. If everybody who's part of it and who benefits makes some contribution, then what do you know? What do you know? It's pretty much covered, right? What a great system. It's pretty easy, isn't it? It's pretty easy. All right, so you think, oh, well, that sounds great. Well, what should I be doing? Well, how much should I be contributing? Because, as we've established, 10% is not an obligation or ours. So there's no magic amount. There's no percentage. It's what we said before, what you've purposed in your heart, right? So the important part is that you're being intentional and purposeful, and that you're being honest between yourself and God, right? Right? So, and here's a practical tip for you, right? Maybe you could work out a percentage, right? And then, here's an idea. Maybe you could schedule it weekly or fortnightly. Maybe you could do that at restore.com.au/give, right? What a great and affordable idea, all right? And then you're not doing it from obligation. It's joyful. You're a cheerful giver because you're into what church is doing and you're benefiting and you want to be part of the solution, all right? Here's another idea for you. How about you start your thinking at approximately 10%, all right? Let's start there. Then you look at your individual circumstances and then you maybe go up or down from there. If you're going super good, maybe you go a bit higher. If you're in a bit of a down period, maybe you go a bit lower. It's entirely up to you, and it's between you and God, all right? And it will depend entirely on your personal circumstances. But I think 10's a pretty good baseline to start with, all right? So the second part is, the slide before says where you have opportunity to contribute to the needs of others, particularly those of the household of faith, right? So this means if there is a need that's presented to you in some way or another, and you are reasonably able to help or meet it, you should maybe consider actually doing that, all right? So, and especially within the church community or things connected to the church community or within the household of faith, which is pretty broad. That's pretty broad. That could be worldwide, whatever, all right? But the idea here is it's ground level. We're going to be looking after each other, right? That should be something that we're looking out for. And opportunities to help each other, because different people go through different stages, and some people go through hard times and some people go through good times. So you want to be there for the people going through hard times, and then vice versa when it's you, all right? So I personally think that this ground level, right, and this is how I do it anyway, is I think that's more effective than like large organisations. Now this is just me, right? But because I'm a bit sceptical about these things, but it feels to me like a lot of larger organisations, or even like organisations out in the world, that a lot gets chewed up in admin and marketing and all that sort of stuff. So, all right, so two quick tales, right? So, one quick tale. So. This is 25 years ago, all right? 25 years ago, I got a Commonwealth bank account. And for some reason, they sent me two cards. They sent me two EFTPOS cards, and both worked. So normally I'd chuck one away, but for some reason, I just put them in my wallet. I had two EFTPOS cards, all right? So then one Sunday night after church, I'm just talking with my friend, right? And my friend is in Bible college, and she says to me, that she wasn't asking for anything. We were just talking, and she says she's a bit worried because she's in Bible college, so she's pretty poor. And she said, I get paid on Wednesday, but my car's almost out of petrol. Right? So now I don't have heaps of money at this point, but I had some. So I take the second card out, and I was just gonna chuck it, and I say to her, take this, put petrol in your car, and then chuck the card away. Okay. All right? Now that girl is now my wife. No, she's not. No. No, it wasn't Tracy, but wouldn't that have been a great twist? Right? No, she was just a friend of mine at the time. All right. So the point here is to be wise, right? That petrol, it was only $30, right? Remember when petrol was $30? I think it was probably like 60 cents a litre at the time. Can you believe it? So the point being, that $30, right? Where does it go further? If I contribute it to some, concert that's on TV where there's celebrities and it's, oh yeah, let's give the money to go to, I don't know, whatever, farmers or flood victims or whatever. Or if I give that $30 directly to my friend and it goes directly into a petrol tank, right? So to me, that is where our dollars go further, right? By giving it directly. So I think we should be doing that as much as possible, all right? Give to whatever you want, but let's be wise about it, okay? You've got to have a reasonable expectation that your giving will actually help to solve the problem that it's supposed to and not just disappear in a cloud of good intentions. All right, so to summarise that, contribute where you're fed and planted, meet needs where you're able, especially in the household of faith. All right, so the last one. The last one is the last way that people tend to give, and that's not at all. Maybe you're not doing anything at the moment. Now, as I said before, no pressure, right? If you're currently in no giving period, if your generosity is on hold for some reason, then that is fine. I've been there too. I've been in a position where you've got to be very careful with with your outgoings. I've been there a couple of times, all right? But you want to make it temporary, all right? You want to get back on your feet, but I'm not down on you. It's between you and God, all right? However, I want to make sure you've got a real reason. So I'm going to drop 3 truth bombs, okay? All right? Generally about finances, all right? So this is if you're doing, and I don't just mean like. Again, this is not just about, give money to the church. This is about being a generous person, right? Holistically, all right? So, first point is, if we really want something, we will find the time and the money, right? If you really want it, all right? So, like when I was younger, I would go out with my friends. Now, I wasn't a drinker or anything, right? But some of them were. And I would watch them. Like, we were all poor. We were all like students or whatever. They would drop 50, 100, like 100 or more dollars in a night or on a weekend, like going out. And I was like, how do they find a way? But they did, because that's what they wanted to do. Or maybe like we've all got a thing. We've all got a thing where our brain just switches off to work out, is this good value or not? Because we just want to do it, right? Some like iPhone. Some people got to have the latest iPhone or whatever, or I don't know, golf clubs or cars or whatever. We've all got one. Now, I'm not saying don't do those things, okay? Do the things you love. It's perfectly fine, right? I don't like the idea of, don't do this and give the money away, right? That's just making your life a misery, and you're not going to be a cheerful giver. You're going to be resentful. So do the things you like, but the point is, right, do the things that you... unless the thing you love is teenage drinking, right? Don't do that, okay? Don't be dropping that. You can quit. But everything else, it's fine. But the point being, we find a way, don't we? We want something bad enough, we find a way. So if that's your excuse, not so good. Okay, second one. All right, now, let's say we're talking about 10% or even 5% or even 1%, all right? Now, really, you can exist, no problem, on 100% of your income, but at 95%, you're in financial ruin and you're living in the street. Really, if tomorrow, right, you got a 10% pay cut, or you had to get a new job and it paid less, or your business revenue's down 10%, or inflation erodes the buying power of your money by 10%, which actually happens all the time, what do? We adjust and we adapt, right? So, can't afford it is, again, no pressure, it's between you and God, but be real. We adjust and we adapt. We do the things we want to do, and whatever happens, we adjust, all right? By the way, if you're burning through 100% or more of your income, right, that's probably a budgeting problem, all right? I'm not going to take that up with you now. That's up to you. But don't spend more than 100% of your income. Not a good idea. All right. So, and the final one is, we all kind of want to be a generous person, right? We all kind of want to. But sometimes we'll be like, but I'll start doing that when I've got more money, or when I get a better job, or when I hit this income level, or when I finish school, or when I finish university. But here's the thing, it's not, when you reach that goal, it's not going to trigger. It's not going to happen, right? Because giving and generosity, it doesn't come from a bank account or a number or a life situation. It comes from the heart, right? It comes from the heart. If you're a generous poor person, you'll be a generous rich person, and vice versa, okay? So there's no magical income number that will change anything, all right? Your external circumstances don't flick the generosity switch. Only you can flick it, okay? All right, there we go. That was a bit heavy. All right, so now, conclusion, to sum this up. The Old Testament, we've got obligation, we've got blessing, we've got cursing, right? It's very restrictive. They have to do it. They have to do it. New Testament, God loves a cheerful giver. We're deliberate. We purpose in our heart. We're intentional, all right? Sow where you're planted, meet needs where you can. And why are we doing it? Because we love Jesus, because we're grateful to him, and we love his church, and we love his people, and we want to look after each other. And why wouldn't you be part of wanting to make that happen? All right? And that's all I have to say about that. So